Watch this.
Our lieutenant governor making a video appearance at an alternative political action conference in Florida. It's making some waves here in Idaho. Some saying she should have at least known better, or should even resign. That's not what she's saying. On its surface, it's a bill aiming to fund students, not systems. But critics say it's not what it seems. In fact, it could actually be unconstitutional. And no petrol party? A top Washington state Democrat is pulling support for his own bill, one aimed at taxing neighbors, including Idaho, for gas. Apparently, he heard Idaho's constitutional concerns.
Good evening, America First Political Action Conference attendees. I'm Janice McGeachin, Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Idaho. Congratulations on your third annual event, and keep up the good work fighting for our country.
That is Lieutenant Governor McGeachin making a video appearance at the America First Political Action Conference in Orlando last week. That video, which aired Friday and lasted just under 6 minutes, has hung around a lot longer than that. By Saturday, several organizations and political leaders across Idaho were calling for her resignation. Why? Because AFPAC, which dubs itself the alternative to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference being held at the same time in the same city, well, AFPAC has a list of questionable characters. Let's just say alternative is a fine choice of words because many consider AFPAC a conference for the alt-right. Why? Well, because the event is attended, headlined, and organized by supposed white nationalists and anti-Semites. Not all of them, though, but just some of the big ones. For example, the man who spoke just before Lieutenant Governor McGeachin's video played is named Vincent James, or Vincent James Fox, a known white nationalist and anti-Semite. He's the founder of the website Veracity.com and once part of a white supremacist group from Southern California. Then there's the organizer and headliner, Nick Fuentes, who took part in the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville and the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. Here he is speaking about writer Matt Walsh on his America First podcast.
Matt Walsh, Shabbos Goy, race traitor. That's what it is, folks. I know some people don't like to use that expression, but it's totally true. Throwing his own people under the bus. He hates white people. Nobody else talks like that about their own people except for white people, and it's gross. Race traitor. You work for Jews, you know. That's gonna get me in trouble.
So these are the kinds of people Lieutenant Governor thought would be a good idea with which to share a stage to say this.
I need freedom fighters all over this country that are willing to stand up and fight for the protection of our freedoms and liberties, even when that means fighting amongst our own ranks, because there are too many Republicans who do not exhibit the courage that is needed today for us to fight to protect our freedoms and our liberties. We are literally in a fight for our lives.
Okay, so being a part of that, this is why there's been a backlash to Idaho's Lieutenant Governor, who said, regrettably, she couldn't attend in person. By Saturday afternoon, Lieutenant Governor McGeachin decided to respond to the calls for her resignation. First, blaming the media, and second, she supports many America First policies, she said, saying, I was invited to submit a video to AFPAC, and I took the opportunity to share my views about these vital America First policies. I do not and have never supported identity politics or other discriminatory views that only seek to divide us and not unite us. Anyone who actually listens to what I say or who pays attention to what I've done in my many years of service knows this is true. That statement, though, left a lot of unanswered questions, some of which we were able to ask the Lieutenant Governor today when we caught up with her just outside of her office. Mostly, did you know what you were getting involved with? And if you did, why go ahead with it?
There's a growing number of conservatives, young conservatives all across the country that are really concerned about the direction that our country is headed. This America First Political Action Conference, that's who they are. And they're all committed to supporting the America First policies, especially as it relates to our wide open borders under the Biden administration. We're losing our country. They're worried about that. They're worried about election integrity. So I was asked to present a video. I wasn't able to be there personally, so I was asked to present a video along with others, Michelle Malkin, Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, and a few others.
Are you familiar with who puts this event on? Like Nick Fuentes?
I don't know who he is. I've never met him. I don't know who he is.
Did you not look into it before you decided to say okay? Like to find out, I mean, his name is on it.
Well, you know what? Nick Fuentes, as I said, I don't know him. I've never met him. I don't know, what he's, everything that he says or doesn't say is not, does not reflect on who I am or who the thousands of others that are participating in this movement.
Okay. You didn't bother to look up his name or anything?
I didn't say that.
You did look him up?
You didn't, that's not the question that you asked me.
Did you look up who Nick Fuentes was and what he's talked about? Like things he has said?
I have since.
Since last week, not before?
Yes.
Okay, I guess the question is, because if you've said, well, I'm only here because...
And it's not fair. I mean, the mainstream media, you do this to conservatives all the time, but you don't do it to yourself. That anytime there's any kind of affiliation with anybody at any time on any stage, that we're all guilty by association, and it's not appropriate.
But the association is not a good one. To be associated with people who are anti-Semitic or...
Stop.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
You asked me why I was there, why I wanted to participate and speak to these young conservatives. That's what we're talking about right now.
Okay. Vincent James was also there, correct? Do you know who Vincent James is?
I've heard of him.
You've had your picture taken with him?
I did have my picture taken with him.
Okay. Do you know what he stands for and things that he has said?
No, I don't know all the things that he or anybody else. And again, I'm just going to keep repeating the same thing, that this guilt by association that the media tries to do with conservatives and conservatives only is that if we ever have met somebody once or took a picture with them or ever shared a stage with somebody ever, we're all guilty by association. If you want to know why I went there and what my message was, go watch my video.
I did watch your video, and if you
So
had
that's
known,
what it was all about.
If you had known who Nick Fuentes is, would you have said yes?
Well, again, this movement is so much bigger than one individual. Who cares what Nick Fuentes has to say? Who cares? There's thousands and thousands of young conservatives all across the country that are very concerned about what's happening to our country. We are fighting for the soul of our nation. With these wide open borders, it's only a matter of time that America, we lose who we are as a free country. And I'm not gonna run away. I'm not gonna hide from being willing and wanting to go talk to young conservatives about these issues.
If you say nobody cares what Nick Fuentes says, but people care that you're associated with them or that you share a stage with something
Again,
like that.
you're trying to do this guilt by association over and over and over again, and it needs to stop. Because if you want to know who I am and why I went there, I told you that. And don't assassinate me or my character over something that any individual that I may ever have met in my life. If there are things that are said or that they believe in, then that's that person, it's not me.
But that's not the first time. My point of bringing up Vincent James.
There you go.
Right? I mean, that's not the first time you've been associated with this group.
Interview's over.
All right, thank you, I appreciate it. And that would have been the end of the interview right there. But we showed you the whole thing. We didn't want to edit any of that out, just to let you know you can have the whole thing from beginning to end and hear what she had to say in her answers. And just to point out, when she says, who cares what Nick Fuentes has to say, the entire room of people spent his entire speech cheering him on. So there's a lot of people that saw her video that also cheered on Nick Fuentes. And the guy with the hat, that's, Vincent James. We did have other questions to ask Lieutenant Governor if she would actually denounce white supremacy and anti-Semitic views shared by those who invited her to speak. We didn't get to that answer or that question, as you could see. In case there was any doubt that Nick Fuentes and Vincent James were being mislabeled by something they said in the past, well, here's a sample of what they said at the conference, the same day they played Lieutenant Governor McGeachin's video statement.
Western, white, culture is the majority culture to which even non-whites assimilate into today in many Western countries, and they're better off for it.
We've got the white Christian men that built this country the first time, and we'll do it again.
This afternoon, the Idaho Democratic Party has called on the Idaho GOP to condemn Lieutenant Governor McGeachin's participation in this event. We reached out as well, but we still haven't heard back. They've remained silent so far. Nick Fuentes said one more thing, though, in his speech Friday that might give you a sample of his intentions.
We will continue to gain a foothold in state governments across the country. This is the true seat of electoral power in our future. And you know, I look at some of the political delegations here tonight, and I've got my eye on Arizona, Idaho, Florida. I've got my eye on a lot of state governments in this country in this decade. They're going to belong to America first.
So who cares what Nick Fuentes has to say? Guilt by association might be a defensive pill that's a bit hard to swallow, though, when you not only share the same stage, but some of the same platforms and even the same rallying cry. A passionate discussion over public money and private education, a debate that took nearly 2.5 hours this morning. Okay, so this won't take that long. The part of the show where you get involved. Grab your phones and text us. Your questions, your comments, we'll even listen to your complaints. But be careful what you send, because we might share it at the end of the show. 208-321-5614. Don't forget, include your name and the hashtag, the 208. All right, the Fund Students, Not Systems legislation that's making its way through the Idaho State House had its first major debate today with public testimony in the House Education Committee. We touched on this a little bit last week and saw your messages asking us to follow up on new legislation that would allow state tax dollars to go to families to help pay for their child's education needs. The idea is seeing vocal support, but also major pushback. Some argue the concept under current Idaho law is simply against the law. Here's Joe Paris.
Legislation making its way through the Idaho State House tries to create more education options for families by giving them access to tax dollars. In short, the Hope and Opportunity Scholarship would create an education savings account. Eligible families would get about $6,000 per student from Idaho to spend on things like online learning programs, tutoring, textbooks, computer hardware, technology, things of that nature. But the legislation would also allow families to use tax dollars for tuition at a private school. This is a bridge too far for some. Supporters and critics went back and forth until the House Education Committee ran out of time early Monday. Debate centered on the quality and merits of public education in Idaho.
We support HB 669 for economic reasons. The 155-year-old government-dominated, union-driven education system established by Andrew Johnson in 1867 has lost its way. It is a monopoly and has become bloated and sloppy.
Whether you call it a savings account or you call it a voucher, the results are the same. You take away the ability for the state to regulate, account for public dollars, and most importantly, have no control over curriculum being taught.
parents spoke about concerns with public school curriculum as a justification for the program. That idea was countered by parents who said taking money from public schools only makes it harder for everyone.
There is an inordinate amount of time now being spent teaching identity politics and social justice theories. The state of Idaho's education system, according to the World Population Review's 33 academic-based objective metrics, 33, is now ranked 38th out of 50.
This results in a defunding of public schools under this bill, which will invariably result in greater reliance on local levies and higher property taxes.
Supporters of the bill questioned why they couldn't use taxpayer dollars to better their child's specific education needs if the same money was already going towards supporting Idaho students. Critics point out that allowing public funds to go to private schools through ideas like this are simply illegal.
What we're really asking for is taxpayers' money in the hands of taxpayers. They can spend it better and be better students than D.C., who are spending it like drunken sailors. This money belongs to the parents, not a teachers' union or school.
This bill would divert taxpayer money from public schools to private and parochial schools at a time when Idaho ranks last in per pupil funding in the nation. Our state constitution requires the government to provide a free and thorough public education for the children in our state. Idaho's school districts and charters are doing just that.
Public schools and politicians that disrespect parents and restrict choice are paying the price across this nation. Don't add yourselves to that list. Please vote in favor of House Bill 669.
The committee meeting ended with no final decision or discussion on advancing the legislation to the full House. The entire session was taken up by public testimony. The discussion, though, is expected to come up again soon, as tomorrow or possibly later this week.
All right, Joe, so public money for private education, possibly. Legal concerns?
Yeah, there's legal concerns that it violates the United States Constitution and the Idaho Constitution, and there are questions out there right now saying, well, what if somehow this legislation does clear the House, it clears the Senate, and gets to the governor's desk? If it was signed into law, would this start happening? And that's really the situation we find ourselves in now, where it's this gray, uncharted territory, not in the sense of signing legislation that could be against the law, but going into this program that some are labeling as vouchers, the sponsors are calling it the scholarship program. There's legal questions about if you can use public money at all to fund private education. Now, supporters of the bill say there are ways to do it that are in line with, staying in the law, and they, cite campaigns and work in other states. But here in Idaho, it'd be interesting to see how it plays out specifically because of how it's written in the state constitution and the concerns. I'm under the impression from critics of the bill that they're trying to get an attorney general's opinion on this. Supporters of the bill say this is a scholarship to support families.
As we've seen before, though, legal concerns in no way stop the legislature nor the governor from signing bills.
Three-pronged system.
Yep, we'll see how it goes. All right, Thanks, Joe. It seemed destined to be a thing, but now it appears it isn't. 2 weeks ago, Washington State Democrats introduced a bill that would tax all gas sent out of their state. So just to put that in perspective, nearly 40% of fuel processed in Washington State in their refineries is sent to neighboring states, and that includes Oregon, Alaska, and Idaho. It was supposed to be a 6-cent per gallon tax, and that would raise nearly $2 billion over the next 16 years to help pay for the state's crumbling infrastructure. We talked about this and how Idaho state leaders took issue with that possibility, with Governor Little and the Attorney General penning a letter to Governor Jay Inslee asking him to step in and stop the bill. Members of Idaho's legislature and Oregon's Governor Kate Brown also chimed in. And it got the attention of some members of Washington's Transportation Committee who voted to delay the tax until next summer. But over the weekend, one of the bill's sponsors, Representative Jake Fay, a Democrat from Tacoma, says he no longer backs the bill, telling the Seattle Times he heard the concerns not only from citizens, but from the governors of Oregon, Alaska, and Idaho. He also says what's happening in Ukraine played a factor in his decision. Right now, the bill is still sitting in their House Rules Committee. In 1944, Don joined the Marines out of Sioux City, Iowa, at the age of 17.
They took 17-year-olds if your mother was signed for you.
Anxious to serve his country.
The war was going on. I was afraid it was going to end before I got in it.
Just days after turning 18, as a member of the 5th Marine Division, Don found himself on a beach in the Battle of Iwo Jima.
They let us crowd the beach of the Marines, and then they opened up on us, and they couldn't miss.
In 4 days, the Marines took Mount Suribachi.
I remember the day they raised the flag.
While that certainly wasn't the end of the battle,
then we went on from there.
Don would only stay in the Corps another 2 years.
Thinking of you on your birthday.
Then all these years later,
We got more?
these letters.
This is from Chelsea in Austin, Texas.
From folks he's never met?
Nope.
How?
It's a big deal. 95 is a big deal.
His daughter, Julie.
He's my hero. He's just amazing. So
Julie wanted to come up with something to top the Civil War cannonball she gave him for his 90th.
I wanted to make it super special.
So she went to social media, posting on an Iwo Jima survivor's Facebook page about her legally blind father who lives alone.
And just said, hey, my dad's going to be 95. It'd be really cool if he could get some cards.
Some cards, Julie said, like maybe 10 to 15. Well, 2 weeks ago, when we first introduced you to Don Brown, the Marine who survived Iwo Jima and turned 95 on February 16th, well, because of his daughter's post, Don ended up getting more than 300 cards and handwritten letters, including one from Governor Brad Little and Senator Jim Risch. Well, last week, I was planning on dropping off this bundle that we received here at the station from you, from all of you, and maybe stick around and listen to Abby read some of these cards and letters to Don. But unfortunately, that day, Wednesday, Julie let me know Don was found on his bathroom floor unconscious. He was rushed to the hospital where, after a brief rally on Thursday, Don passed away peacefully this morning. Julie told me she and Abby read the letters and cards that you sent to Don. They read it to him last night. A bittersweet moment for sure, the heartbreak of losing her father, but knowing how many people took the time to tell him how grateful they were for him. She said she couldn't have imagined a better 95th birthday for her dad, other than the promise of a 96th, which is why it's a big deal when we say we are losing 234 World War II veterans a day. It's a big deal. And if you know one, make sure they know how special they are. Semper Fi, and rest in peace, Marine Corporal Don Brown. All right, here's the last moment of the show. I was just thinking about some of the comments that we've gotten today. A few people, I wouldn't say a lot, a few people commenting that maybe we bullied or badgered Lieutenant Governor McGeachin when we tried to ask her these questions about her participation in the AFPAC conference in Orlando last week. And I just wanted to point out, it was just kind of trying to get the answers that I know a lot of you have and a lot of us here have as to why somebody would involve themselves in something like this that is this kind of known, that people do know this and who else participated in it without doing a little bit of background research. And we were trying to get those answers as opposed to what she just said in her press release. I didn't view it so much as badgering, but just waiting or trying to get a better answer than what we received. But a lot of people commenting about today. Janice needs to either do her research or cop to knowing what's what. I'll be voting my first Republican primary, says Steve. Lieutenant Governor admitted not doing her due diligence and she wants to be governor. Guilty by association is absolutely a great way to judge people. I care who Nick is, says Nancy in McCall. I'd be curious to see what the Wasma Center for Human Rights has to say about Lieutenant Governor's participation. We'll look into that. We'll see you tomorrow.